Yeah, on behalf of the Sydney Swans, I'd just like to announce that we've, for the first time in our history, achieved 65,000 members. It's a magnificent achievement for this footy club in the most competitive sporting market in the world. We're comfortably the #1 supported team in New South Wales, and so a big thank you to all of our supporters and members, and particularly our paid up members that have helped us achieve this goal. So thank you very much to all those people who have put their hard-earned cash into the footy club and followed us as members. A magnificent achievement and one we're really proud of.
You hope you'll have a reasonable supporter base there on Friday night, 'cause it's going to be pretty Carlton-centric, I'd imagine.
Yeah, well, I mean, the great thing about having the heritage that we've got in Melbourne and also our base in Sydney is that we feel genuinely supported around the country, and I think that's really fortunate. There's no doubt there'll be a majority of Carlton supporters at the MCG on Friday night in a sold-out MCG. But the great thing about our Melbourne heritage is we've got some really strong supporter base in Melbourne, and hopefully they're there in full voice. They'll need to be. So we're really looking forward to it.
I guess you're used to the week off now before the finals. What's been the main focus heading into Friday night for you?
It's always a couple of things. It's we trained over the weekend, made sure we get the balance right between freshening some of the players up that needed to be, but also working hard. We had a tough training session on Saturday to sharpen up, and knowing full well that we've got to be really good in the contest to get it done this week. So that was our focus over the weekend, making sure we looked at what we did, and this week we're sort of looking at Carlton and what they do and working through that.
You mentioned after the Melbourne game about how you felt things needed to change with these fourth quarters where you kind of weren't able to turn things around. Have you kind of identified anything in the sort of past fortnight and feel confident going into the Carlton clash?
Yeah, there's a couple of things. I think first and foremost, we've been doing a lot right in a fair bit of the game, so we just need to do it for longer. There's a couple of things we looked at, but we've also got to make sure that we continue to strive to do what we do to get us in those positions in the first place. Whether it's halfway through the third, and continue to do that for a bit longer. But the most importantly, we've got to make sure we do it from the first bounce this week. Obviously Carlton haven't been in the finals for a few years. They'll be ready to go. They'll be jumping out of the blocks, and we've got to match that intensity and take it to the next level early on, and it'll be a fierce contest from the first bounce.
Obviously, with two names looking to come back in Tommy Papley and hopefully Justin McInerney, how are they tracking?
Yeah, they've both been tracking really well. I mean, Paps was really close to playing against Melbourne, so he trained really well on Saturday, trained well yesterday. If he gets through training tomorrow, he'll play. Justin's been tracking along really well, so he's had a couple of weeks of training now, a couple of big sessions again, a big one on the weekend, another good crack yesterday. See how he pulls up tomorrow after his training session, and hopefully gets through that, and he'll be available for selection as well. So that'd be a good thing to have a couple of players available that weren't available for a few weeks.
Have you taken a second just to look back yourself personally? Because I feel like it was only 2 months ago we were standing here talking about how it was going to be such a tough road to make the finals, and the odds were against it, and now you're here.
Yeah, look, it's 50% of the teams that made it last year didn't make it this year into the final series, including last year's premier. So it's a tough thing to do every year. I think it can be underestimated just how hard it is to make the finals every year, and the whole competition set up that you don't do that essentially. So it's a real challenge, and so I'm really proud of the resilience of the footy club and the players to be able to just to keep pushing along and keep working at what we needed to do to get right every week. And they've been able to do that to give us a chance and a spot on the starting grid, and so I'm really pleased with that. But now it starts again. It's we certainly back in, I think it was round 17. We needed a really strong push, which we've got, and now we need to start again. We've got a spot on the grid, and we go hard at Carlton this week, who have been fantastic, and in the second half of the year probably the best performing team. I think they won 9 in a row before the GWS game on the weekend. We won 6 in a row before the weekend's game as well. So 2 teams in the second half of the year that have been in reasonable form.
What do you see as the turning point in the season to get you on this role?
There's a few things involved. We've had player availability, particularly structural players that we didn't have in the first half of the year. That makes a big difference to our team and our setup and our rhythm of our game. So that was important to get those players back, and then it's just about having the confidence that what we do has been pretty good, even for that first half of the year. We just needed to finish off some games, and we were able to do that for large parts of that second part of the year, which held us in good stead to be able to make a real charge for the finals.
How much do you value finals experience, do you think? Obviously, it's a clear leg up your boys have over Carlton.
Yeah, we've got a lot of young players though. I mean, those, if you look at our midfield, for instance, they're very young. Our key forwards, all those guys are very young. We've been fortunate to play finals. Even though they're young, they've played finals for the last couple of years, which is good. I mean, what that does is prepare the players for the expectation of how hard it's going to be and how tough it's going to be. It goes up a level in finals. The pressure around the ball, you need to be hard and clean. The execution of your game plan needs to be absolutely spot on, because otherwise it gets torn apart. So you need to be we have that understanding, but we also know that every year it's a new story, and you need to prepare yourself and go again, whether you've played finals a year before or not. We need to make sure we're ready to go, and Friday night we need to be ready when that first bounce goes.
Just on McInerney, so it might have been 6 weeks that he hasn't played leading into this game. Is that going to be a factor when it comes to his selection?
I mean, we weigh up everything. I mean, he's done a couple of weeks of training, a number of weeks of running. He's very fit. We'll weigh up everything when it comes down to team selection and pick the best team we think will give us the best chance.
The wet weather, how does that factor potentially team selection? Could it all make way if it's really pouring down before the bounce?
That's obviously an option for both teams. Sometimes in the really wet conditions, you need the targets to kick to, because you don't have it's just very much more of a straight line game. So, those discussions will take place, I'm sure, for both teams. But ultimately, it's about both teams preparing for a game, no matter what the weather conditions, and contest pressure around the ball are the two things that usually get you the ground position.
What lessons, if any, are you taking from last year's grand final going into these finals?
We just try and keep improving, and that's all we can do is keep improving. I mean, last year was a story. This year's a new chance for a new story. We started the season off that way, and we're certainly focusing on that leading into another final series. As I said before, that 50% of the teams that made it last year didn't make it this year. It's tough to do. So we've done a couple of things right this year, and hopefully we've got a couple more things to do right before the end of the year.
It's great to see the men's players down supporting the ladies' FLW. What effect has that win had in terms of the playing group and just the culture within the club?
Oh, well, one win doesn't impact the culture of a footy club, you'd hope. You hope it's a bit more sustainable than that. But it was great to be out there and watch that game. I mean, sitting in the crowd with the boys, it was fantastic to be able to, you don't have another team to support. You don't often sit there and watch a team and support it as hard as what we did on the weekend. And so to sit there and see them get well behind halfway through the third and then come back the way they did, and understanding in this magnificent facility we see how much work they do and how big a pre-season they've had, and when that siren went, it was awesome. It was just magnificent to see to see us get our first win after a lot of people have done a lot of hard work, and the smiles on the players' faces was terrific.
Just on your forward line, obviously, regardless of the weather, your tools are very talented, but still a bit raw and maybe lacking some finals experience. With that in mind, how important are Isaac Heaney and Tom Papley in terms of your ready-made players in their prime on a big stage like this? Yeah, look, they're players. They've both been around for a while and understand what it's about, and understand the importance of playing well and playing to your trademark every week. And those guys, we're confident that they can help steer those younger ones around a bit. I think everyone's just got a role to play, whether you're young or old. It doesn't really matter. No one really takes notice of it when the ball bounces. You've just got to get the job done. No one looks at your birth certificate or your experience or anything like that. You just have to get it done. And I think ultimately that's what we'll be talking to our players about, is when the ball bounces, we've just got to go out and get it done, and both teams will be after the same thing.
We've spoken a bit about the clearances and contested ball this year that have been probably down on kind of last year's levels, but you've slowly turned them around, but clearly that's where Carlton have kind of really gone into their own in the last sort of 3 months. So are you confident that you can turn that around enough to kind of even out that contest?
Yeah, well, have to be, and it's really a strength of Carlton's. There's no question about that. They're number one in the competition at that, so they're very good at winning the contested footy all over the ground. We've been okay at putting pressure on, and And so contested footy and pressure will have a large say in the game. It's about sort of nullifying one's strength and maximising yours. And both teams will be trying to do the same thing. And there's no question that we need to make sure that we win our fair share of the footy to get the ball in your front half. Finals games are always about maximising your ground position and getting the ball in your forward half as much as you can. It starts at the source, and they've got a wonderful midfield, and so we'll need to make sure that our midfield's up and about.
Wixie has really emerged as that pressure forward, and he's come into his own, I guess, in the back half of this season as well.
Yeah, he has been important. I mean, it's just to allow, if you get the ball in the front half, to be able to put pressure on the opposition's exits is important. And he's one player that does get after the opposition and puts pressure on the opposition's defensive exits, which is good. He and Paps and those guys at ground level putting that pressure on is really important. We've got to get the ball to ground. Wettering's a wonderful intercept marker, and so their defenders in one-on-one situations are as good as any. So we've got to make sure that we get to work and get the ball in there, then do what we need to do to make sure we kick and score.
Likely big task for Tom McCartan. How important is it that the team helps him out when it comes to trying to stop Charlie Curnow?
Yeah, obviously he's one of the premier forwards in the competition. It won't be just about Tommy. We'll have to put enormous pressure on up the ground as a first point of call, and then secondly we'll make sure that it's a team-orientated defence. We've just got to all work together to be able to help each other in our back half. They're obviously a very talented forward line. They've got a good mix of super talented tools that take big marks, that give them targets down the line, but also some great small level players that are able to get the ball at ground level. So, we've got to make sure that it'll be a pressure game, try and restrict the amount of entries they've got. That'll be the challenge.